In this episode, we talk about Shivraj Singh Chouhan being appointed as the Union Agriculture Minister. We also talk about the possibility of US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visiting India this month. But first, we talk about the new cabinet that has been formed under the Modi government 3.0. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. As the official session of the 17th Lok Sabha Assembly concluded and Narendra Modi took oath as the Prime Minister for the third consecutive time, the NDA government announced its new cabinet on Monday. While the Modi 2.0 government witnessed significant reshuffling and the introduction of new names, this cabinet seems to signal continuity by retaining some of the big names from the previous cabinet. To talk about these changes and how they accommodate BJP's alliance partners, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to Indian Express's Vikas Pathak in this segment.
Vikas, we'll talk about the changes, of course, but can you begin by talking about what has remained unchanged about the cabinet this time and people who have retained their positions?
Yeah, so there are many retentions. What is most important is that the Cabinet Committee on Security remains unchanged, which means the top positions remain unchanged.
Right, and for those who may not know, the Cabinet Committee on Security includes the Prime Minister, the Defence Minister, the Home Minister, the Finance Minister, and the Minister of External Affairs.
Yeah, precisely. So it's a very high-powered body. It has got the top four cabinet ministers plus the Prime Minister. Of course, the Prime Minister is topmost, but apart from that, the crucial ministries of Home, External Affairs, Finance and Defence. So that CCS remains unchanged with Modi as Prime Minister, and with Amit Shah as Home Minister, with Rajnath Singh as Defence Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman as Finance Minister, and S. Jaishankar as Minister of External Affairs. Which means the engine of the cabinet, so to say, or the Council of Ministers, in fact, remains the same. That apart, there are quite a few retentions anyway. So, in a way, the broad message of the new Council of Ministers is continuity. Of course, within that broad message, some heft has been added to it because you have someone like Shivraj Singh Chouhan, who has been Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister for around 18 years and has been pretty successful in the agriculture sector. There was a virtual turnaround of the agriculture sector in Madhya Pradesh under him. So he has been given the Ministry of Agriculture, which actually brings someone with vast experience and someone who has been very successful in his state. And of course, someone who could win his election by 8.2 lakh votes and could steer his party after 18 years to a 163 seat win out of 230 in Madhya Pradesh. So we have that kind of a person this time in the cabinet. That apart, you also have Manohar Lal Khattar this time, who was Chief Minister of Haryana for 10 years, till recently. So there is continuity, but within that continuity, you have slightly greater heft in the Council of Ministers.
Right, and in the past, there have been a lot of changes when forming the new cabinet, a lot of reshuffling, a lot of names being dropped. But this time when the BJP has not got a majority, we are seeing much more of a continuity. But is there a sense that there is a change in the pecking order, or do things remain more or less the same in that sense?
So, well, if you see substantively in terms of the cabinet as a whole, there does not seem to be a difference because the message being sent out is continuity. But at the same time, where it comes to optics, because many saw this as a slight dent in the performance of the BJP under Mr. Modi, from 303, they came down to 240 on their own. So I think the Prime Minister has taken care of the optics. He wants to be seen as very accommodative. So when the swearing in happened, very interestingly, let's in fact go back further to the NDA meeting. The proposer of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister in the NDA meeting was Rajnath Singh. And the seconders were Amit Shah and Nitin Gadkari. So in that sense, there is an element there of the last 10 years, which has been about Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah taking the decisions. But at the same time, in the optics, they have picked someone like Mr. Rajnath Singh, who is a leader who predates the Modi era in the BJP. And even Mr. Gadkari, who predates the Modi era at the center in the BJP. So this optics also shows the message is that of a party that is united, where there is a single most powerful leader, but at the same time, there are older leaders. There are leaders who were around 20 years ago, 15 years ago in important positions, who are being given due recognition. Similarly, in the swearing in also, one saw something very interesting that after the Prime Minister, it was Mr. Rajnath Singh who took oath. as a senior leader who has been party president more than once.
मैं राजनाथ सिंह ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूंगा। मैं भारत की
After him, it was Mr. Amit Shah. After Mr. Amit Shah, it was Mr. Nitin Gadkari. After that, Mr. Nanda. And then came Mr. Shivraj Singh Chouhan. In fact, Piyush Goyal, who has been an important minister in the last 5 years, his number came after 10. Because people like Mr. Shivraj Singh Chouhan and Mr. Khattar as chief ministers were sworn in earlier. And you also had a senior leader among the allies, Mr. Kumaraswamy. So in that sense, in terms of optics, the optics are more accommodative. Substantively speaking, the nature of the Council of Ministers is roughly the same.
Right, and despite having allies, BJP has kept ministries like education, railways, transport, agriculture, housing and urban affairs, rural development, petroleum and natural gas with it. But talk about what has gone to its key allies, parties like JDU and TDP.
So basically, when you look at the allies, the TDP has been given the Ministry of Civil Aviation, which is an important ministry. Of course, not a very core ministry, but certainly an important ministry. And this has gone to K. Ram Mohan Naidu, who is son of TDP leader Yeran Naidu. And he's also the youngest cabinet minister in the government. Then it's very interesting that the TDP, even earlier with the NDA, had got the same ministry. And when Mr. Ashok Gajpati Raju was the minister, the JDU does not seem to have been given a great deal because JDU won 12 seats in Bihar, and all that it has been allocated is the Ministry of Panchayati Raj and the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. And that is Mr. Lalan Singh. So, well, it doesn't seem to be much. Then, of course, Chirag Paswan, who's quite a young leader, has got Ministry of Food Processing Industries. That is one. Then Mr. Kumaraswamy of JDS, whose party has just 2 seats, has been allocated heavy industries and steel. Then there's Jitan Ram Manjhi, former Chief Minister of Bihar and leader of the Hindustan Awam Morcha. His party has got only 1 seat, that is his seat, and he has been given the Ministry of MSME, Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises.
Yeah, and besides this, when we talk about Minister of State with independent charge, that has been given to Shiv Sena and RLD. Shiv Sena's Pratap Rao Jadhav is the MOS independent charge for the Ayush Ministry and Health, and RLD's Jayant Chaudhary is MOS independent charge for skill development, and he is MOS education as well.
Yeah, so basically, let us also tell the listeners that the cabinet is that core internal group in the government. These are considered senior ministers. And then there's a category called Minister of State. So the difference is that whenever there's a cabinet meeting, it is attended only by cabinet ministers, and an MOS can attend it only when specifically invited for that meeting. Otherwise, ministers of state do not attend cabinet meetings. So the cabinet is a senior position. Then you come to MOS, Minister of State, in which a slightly senior position is MOS independent charge, which basically means that that particular ministry has no cabinet rank minister. The minister there is a minister of state. So while he or she has charge over the ministry, he or she cannot attend the cabinet meeting, right? And then the third category is MOS, which means that the minister of state is working under a cabinet minister. So ministries can have more than one MOS also. So allies have not got a very great deal, to be very sure. They don't have the really important ministries which have all gone to the BJP. So yes, that is very clear here. Among the allies also, particularly the JDU, with 12 MPs does not seem to have acquired that kind of heft that 12 MPs should bring to it.
Right, and when we talk about TDP and JDU, some say they've not got bigger portfolios is because they want economic assistance from the center instead. But Vikas, when we talk about these decisions, have any caste equations been taken into account?
Yeah, certainly. So there are quite a few OBCs, SCs and STs in the Council of Ministers. Of the Council of Ministers. So it is 72 is the strength. And then let me also tell you that in terms of cabinet, MOS, independent charge and MOS, there are 30 cabinet ministers, 5 ministers of state with independent charge and 36 ministers of state. They come from all parts of India. Representation across 24 states has been given, which are states from different regions of the country. Then when we go to the social groups, by caste that is, there are 27 OBCs, there are 10 scheduled caste ministers, 5 scheduled tribes, and 5 minorities. But these 5 minorities do not include any Muslim.
And Vikas, looking at this list and judging by what this government is trying to signal, what would you say is the upshot for you?
Perhaps many listeners would want to know why there is no change. Why is it that continuity is the message? Because Mr. Modi is one leader who has been known for springing surprises, for sudden changes. That has been his image for the last 10 years. Even in his ministerial reshuffles, people have been removed, people have been inducted, ministries have been changed. All that we have seen for the last 10 years. So suddenly, why is it that the government is exactly the same, almost exactly the same as last time? Perhaps the message that Mr. Modi wants to send across, let's see it this way. In 2014, when he came to power, and then came to power again with an absolute majority in 2019. There were 2 verdicts with an absolute majority. That was something that happened after 30 years. After 1984, the first clean majority of a party alone was in 2014. So Mr. Modi wanted to send across the message that this is not the coalition era, pulls and pressures, weak governments. So this is a new India, and I will lead from the front and take decisions, and sometimes take what he calls hard decisions. So that was the nature of that government, that things will not continue the way you were used to seeing them. But this time, with a diminished majority, as in the BJP alone is now in minority with 240 seats. It's 32 seats short of a majority on its own. So many of the critics of Mr. Modi started saying that these people have lost this election. And he made it clear in the NDA meeting when he said that, how did we lose the election? We did not lose the election, but the NDA is still coming to power. So in order to reinforce the idea that, hey, I am back to power, I am again the prime minister, the NDA has a clear majority, I think Mr. Modi has sent out a message. That is one interpretation, that the government is almost exactly what you saw 3 months ago. So these 63 seats that have tipped in the case of the BJP will not bring about a change in the government. So for a change, for the first time in 10 years, Mr. Modi is sending out a message of continuity rather than change, because he wants to emphasize that these 240 seats that we have got instead of 303, that does not mean that everything is going to change overnight.
Now, after talking about the new cabinet of ministers, we focus our attention to a specific appointment among them. Shivraj Singh Chouhan, the new Minister of Agriculture who Vikas spoke about earlier. Chauhan is known for transforming Madhya Pradesh into an agricultural powerhouse. Under his tenure as the Chief Minister, the state emerged as India's second largest producer of wheat and became one of the primary suppliers to government procurement agencies. In fact, over the last 10 years, MP's annual agricultural growth has averaged 6.5% compared to the national average of only 3.7%. To understand how Chauhan transformed the state's agriculture and the challenges that now lie ahead of him, Indian Express's Rural Affairs editor Harish Damodaran joins us. So Harish, what would you say makes Shivraj Singh Chouhan's appointment as the Agriculture Minister so special?
To start with, he has a remarkable record as Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh from, I think, end 2004 to 2023 end, largely unbroken tenure. And he really oversaw Madhya Pradesh's, a remarkable agricultural transformation, something as remarkable as what Pratap Singh Kero had achieved in Punjab, Punjab, Haryana, the unified Punjab, just after independence. So he has a fantastic track record. And secondly, in Madhya Pradesh, in this time's Lok Sabha elections, BJP has won all the 29 seats. So therefore, he brings in both track record and stature. And Shivraj Singh Chouhan becoming agriculture minister, it raises the policy profile of the sector. But somehow, agriculture, I think, has been relatively ignored by this government. Whereas the earlier government would also have ignored, but then you had someone like Sharad Pawar being the agriculture minister. So I think Shivraj Singh Chouhan becoming agriculture minister would be similar to what Sharad Pawar was, and Sharad Pawar also was a very successful agriculture minister. Sharad Pawar made Maharashtra into a horticulture powerhouse, right? I mean, all your grapes and onions, etc. So what Shivraj Singh Chouhan did was something similar in MP. So it's good to have a minister like him. I mean, after a very long time, we are having a good agriculture minister.
And what kind of leadership has this role traditionally seen? Who all in the past have held this post?
See, if you look at the agriculture ministry, in the past, it was always headed by a political heavyweight. India's first agriculture minister was Babu Rajendra Prasad. And then we've had people like, C. Subramaniam. He's actually the father of the Green Revolution. Then you had people like Babu Jagjeevan Ram, Rao Birendra Singh, then Balram Jakhar. And then, of course, we had Sharad Pawar. Sharad Pawar was the agriculture minister during the UPA government, 10 years. During the Modi government, we've had people, pretty low-profile politicians as agriculture ministers, whether it was a Radha Mohan Singh or a Narendra Tomar, or for that matter, Arjun Munda. So none of these people actually, had that kind of a gravitas or who could make their voices heard, in the top echelons of power. So to that extent, Shivraj Singh Chouhan is different.
And could you get into the details of the kind of changes that Chauhan was able to bring about in Madhya Pradesh that got MP to become such a significant contributor to Indian agriculture?
I think the two big things which Chauhan did, or I would say three big things which he did. Number one was irrigation. The number of tube well power, electricity tube well connections, it went up enormously. And plus the irrigation efficiency of the canals improved, There were many canals which were basically, it needed desilting, proper lining of the canals, so they could store more water, And plus, I think even the release of water was rationalized. So therefore, if you see the overall, the irrigation coverage, the net sown area in Madhya Pradesh, which was irrigated, is something like about 80% now. And as a result, today, an average field in Madhya Pradesh grows almost 2 crops, which is as good as Punjab or Haryana. So I would say number one was irrigation. Number two was, I think Madhya Pradesh had, the roads, the village roads. We are not talking of just highways and expressways, etc. We are talking of rural roads, I think there was a lot of investment in rural roads, in rural infrastructure, rural electrification. That was the second big thing which Chauhan did. And the third thing was in the area of marketing. There was hardly any wheat or rice which was bought by the government before Chauhan came. But Chauhan put in place systems for government procurement. So much so that I think about 2 or 3 years back, Madhya Pradesh actually overtook Punjab as the largest contributor of wheat to the central pool, But otherwise it's been number 2, you can say.
Right, and you write that it's not just wheat, but other crops also have done very well in the state. Can you name some of them?
I think chana and masoor, then of course soya-bean. We know Malwa is the soya-bean belt of India, right? Soya-bean. Then even horticulture crops, tomato, garlic. That Mandsaur is a big garlic belt. And onions, and even seed spices, like whether it is methi, whether it is dhania. So I think he has made Madhya Pradesh's agriculture, very diversified. It produces wide range of crops.
And Harish, looking at the state of agriculture at the moment, what are the major challenges that Chauhan is likely to face?
See, I think number one, the ministry itself has become very fragmented over the years. Now you have separate ministries. You have the agriculture ministry, but you have a separate ministry for consumer affairs and food, separate ministry for food processing. Now there is a separate ministry for cooperation. There is a separate ministry for animal husbandry and dairying. And fertilizers is under a separate ministry. So I think the first thing I would have liked all these ministries getting combined. You can have separate departments, but it should be under the same ministry, so that allows for very focused policy formulation and decision making, and which is what India needs today. See, India, unlike other countries, we have a large population. We have many mouths to feed, and India cannot import its food requirements. I think this is a point which I have made earlier also in many of our conversations. So we need to produce more for a growing population and with rising incomes. That is the number one challenge. Number two, we will be having to do this in a scenario of climate change. Earlier, climate change was just, monsoon failing. But now it's not just monsoon failure. we have irregular monsoon patterns, right? In irregular rainfall patterns, like fewer rainy days. Then you have long dry spells. And then there is, suddenly extreme precipitation. And not only rainfall, also temperature, right? I mean, temperatures also, there are huge deviations. So it means we'll have to produce more food amid climate change, and at the same time on less land, using less water. So this is a huge challenge, So I think agriculture should be seen like, defense. It should be seen as a strategic sector.
And so considering that, what are the things that Chauhan could focus on going forward?
I think a lot of things which he did in Madhya Pradesh, it can be replicated across the country, especially irrigation. We need to increase our irrigation coverage. I think that is something which can be done. And along with things like, improving rural roads and those kind of things. But I think there should be more focus on R&D. Like, for example, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, it has really suffered for the lack of funding. We need more investment in climate smart breeding. And I think also it is time now we revisit the controls which we have right now, on whether it's pricing of seed and fertilizer or on new technologies. Like, for example, last 10, 15 years, there are many things like, for example, genetically modified mustard, the introduction of new technologies, especially based on genetic engineering. We need those new technologies. That's very important. And same thing, all these controls on stocking, exports, all these things ultimately, they discourage private investment. And agriculture needs investment. We need warehouses. We need enough private sector interest. But that will not come in an environment of controls. And so I think that is something in the short run, immediately I would say that should be an immediate policy priority. And the third is we should make the farmer use farm inputs more judiciously. So which means, using water properly, using electricity properly, using nutrients, We import most of our fertilizer requirements, including the raw materials, right? We don't have any gas. We don't have any rock phosphate or potash or anything. So I think that should be also a priority.
And in the end, we talk about a top US administration official visiting India. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is likely to visit India next week, sometime around June 18, to review overall progress in the implementation of the ambitious US-India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, that is ICET. People familiar to the matter said yesterday. Sullivan will hold wide-ranging talks with NSA Ajit Doval, primarily focusing on the cooperation under ICET, they said. His visit to India was discussed during a phone call between US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week when Biden called up Modi to congratulate him on his re-election for a third term. This visit was called off twice this year in view of the US administration's focus on the evolving situation in West Asia arising out of the Israel-Hamas conflict. A key aspect of Indo-US engagement has been collaboration in specific high-technology areas, including semiconductors, next-generation telecommunication, artificial intelligence, and defense under the ICET initiative. Along with ICET, Sullivan is also expected to review the ongoing defense cooperation, including an ambitious plan between US defense giant GE Aerospace and India's Hindustan Aeronautics to produce the advanced F414 jet engines for the Indian Air Force. And he will also engage in a deliberation about the ambitious India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, that is IMEC. Billed as a path-breaking initiative, the IMEC envisages a vast road, electricity cable network, a hydrogen pipeline, high-speed data cable network, railroad and shipping networks among Saudi Arabia, India, the United States and Europe, with an aim to ensure integration among Asia, Middle East and the West. The IMEC initiative was firmed up on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Delhi in September last year. The India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor is also seen as an initiative by like-minded nations to gain strategic influence in the face of China's Belt and Road Initiative that has faced increasing criticism over the lack of transparency and disregard for sovereignty of the nations. An agreement was signed by India, Saudi Arabia, the European Union, the United Arab Emirates, the US and some other G20 partners for the corridor. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.